On the first night of moving into a new home, never forget to draw the curtains, because you never know whether behind that pitch-black window opposite, there is a pair of malicious eyes staring dead at you. This was the beginning of Julia's nightmare. The new home hadn't had curtains installed yet, and when Julia casually looked up, she was shocked to find a strange figure standing in the building opposite. The person was completely still, seemingly staring at her. Julia felt goosebumps and was about to step closer to get a clear look, but in the next second, the figure instantly vanished without a trace. She desperately comforted herself that she was just overthinking, but a strong sense of unease kept her tossing and turning all night. Late at night, she couldn't help but walk to the window again, but when she looked up, that strange man was unexpectedly standing at that window again, his gaze icily locked onto her. "Can't sleep?" her husband Francis asked drowsily. No, Julia could only hide it. "Never mind, I must be overthinking it. Go to sleep." Early the next morning, a terrified Julia immediately went out to order curtains. However, on the way home, she noticed a hair-raising detail: that mysterious family kept their window screens tightly closed even during the day, as if hiding some unspeakable secret. And every night, that terrifying silhouette would appear on time. Julia could only endure the discomfort, hoping only that the curtains would arrive sooner. Until that day, when she and her husband Francis were taking a walk downstairs, the residential community was unexpectedly packed with police cars and ambulances. A chill instantly went down Julia's spine. Sure enough, the next day's news headlines broke a serial murder case that shocked the entire city. The victims were all young and beautiful women, and the strangest thing was that the killer sought neither money nor sex, but acted purely to satisfy a twisted criminal desire. To make matters worse, the police currently had no clues. Julia broke out in a cold sweat, and she immediately suspected the peeper opposite. She told her husband all her fears, but Francis felt she was too sensitive, even joking that the person was just unable to sleep and watching the street scene. Not only could he not empathize, but at a subsequent gathering of friends, he even told his wife's fear as a joke to everyone. Facing the roaring laughter of the crowd, Julia could only force a smile, but the fear inside had already consumed her. While Francis was away at work, Julia went to a crowded coffee and frantically looked up information about the case on her computer. When she saw the interview video of the sole survivor, she felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. The surviving girl recalled, a few days before being attacked, she always felt there was a pair of eyes staring at her in the dark. This intuition was exactly the same as what Julia was experiencing right now. Fear completely evolved into reality. Walking on the street, Julia always felt someone was tailing her from behind. To distract herself, she walked into a cinema by the roadside. The cinema was empty, and Julia specifically chose a middle seat with no one around. But shortly after the movie started, a strange figure unexpectedly sat directly behind her. The massive auditorium had countless empty seats, yet this stranger insisted on sitting right next to her. Julia felt a chill down her back. Sensing that the person was constantly approaching, she could no longer bear it, rushed out of her seat in terror, and fled the cinema. However, that strange figure remained motionless in the dark. To save herself, Julia immediately rushed into a densely crowded supermarket. But just as she was picking ingredients and thinking everything was her own hallucination, a man appearing behind her made her whole body freeze again. Those shoes were exactly the same as the shoes of the man who sat behind her in the cinema. Julia realized that a disaster was looming. She pretended to be calm and walked to the side, trying to lose this stalker. But just as she turned a corner, she bumped right into that mysterious man.
Is there a back door?
Julia fled home in a daze, and her unusual state immediately caught Francis's attention. To appease his wife, Francis took her back to the supermarket to check the surveillance. However, the footage showed that the man's behavior was completely normal, whereas Julia was the one acting strangely.
He's staring right at me.
Maybe,
Or what?
or he's staring at the woman who's staring at him.
Her husband's coldness and dismissiveness drove Julia to complete despair. She was speechless and silently took a photo of the man from the surveillance. On that night destined for insomnia, she made a bold decision. The next day, after sending her husband off to work, Julia guarded tightly by the slit of the curtain, monitoring the flow of people entering and leaving the building opposite. But after watching for a whole day, she gained nothing, and she even began to deeply doubt herself. As night fell, a rapid knock on the door suddenly broke the silence. Julia tiptoed to the door and only dared to open it after seeing clearly through the peephole. It turned out to be the old lady living downstairs. The old lady gestured wildly, trying to express something, but Julia could not understand her out-of-town dialect at all. Fortunately, the next-door neighbor, Irina, appeared in time and translated for them. It turned out the old lady was just looking for her lost cat. Because they were close in age, Julia felt a natural warmth toward Irina. The hospitable Irina invited her over to her place for a drink. Irina admitted that the security in this neighborhood was terrible, so she hid a pistol at home for self-defense. This brief moment of relaxation eased Julia's tense nerves slightly. After returning home, she even gathered the courage to pull open the curtains. The figure opposite was still standing there. "You're definitely not looking at me, right?" Julia muttered to herself with a sigh of relief. However, in the next second, the most terrifying thing happened. That strange figure opposite unexpectedly smiled and made a response to her. Not long after, Francis returned home, and Julia seriously warned him again about the gravity of the situation, questioning if he didn't care about her safety at all. But when Francis walked to the window to check, the man opposite had long turned off the lights and disappeared. They chose to call the police again. The police decided to go with Francis to the opposite building for an on-site investigation, leaving Julia alone by the window to monitor the situation. 10 minutes later, her husband pushed the door open and came in. Julia impatiently asked about the outcome. "Listen to me first. Even if it is the same person, he lives nearby, so isn't it normal for him to go to the same supermarket to buy things? Can you stop always trying to rationalize these terrifying things?" Francis once again activated his straight man perfunctory mode, believing it was just a coincidence, and that insisting the person was peeping was pure malicious slander. With even her closest husband unable to be relied upon, an unprecedented helplessness and sorrow completely crushed Julia.
Just tell me what you want me to
Want
do.
you to fucking believe me!
This is just a bad night, Jules.
It's not a bad night. I can't think here. I can't breathe. I mean, I feel like I'm losing my mind.
What can I do to help?
Nothing.
From that day on, Julia completely closed herself off. She no longer went out, blocked the door tightly with a chair, and did not even dare to pull open the curtains anymore. Just as she was preparing to go to sleep, a strange noise suddenly came from Irina's room next door. Julia pressed her ear against the wall to listen and instantly realized that an accident might have occurred next door. She frantically pounded on the neighbor's door, but there was no response inside. The violent commotion attracted the landlord. At Julia's strong insistence, the landlord opened the door with a spare key. However, the room was completely empty, leaving only a shattered table lamp and the cat that the old lady had lost earlier. The surrounding neighbors thought Julia was a lunatic, and the landlord even complained about her directly to Francis. The distrust in her husband's eyes stung her, but at this point, Julia no longer cared. Irina stayed out all night and didn't even show up for work the next day. Just then, a strange man frantically knocked on Irina's door. This person turned out to be Irina's boyfriend. He said he had an appointment with his girlfriend at a bar last night, but was stood up, so he felt his girlfriend was intentionally hiding in the room, refusing to see him. But Julia told him definitively that Irina had not returned at all last night. She dialed Irina's phone, and the piercing ringtone unexpectedly really came out of the tightly closed empty room. Yet the arrogant boyfriend still thought this was just his girlfriend's prank and turned away angrily. Julia stopped him at once, begging him to do her one last favor. She took the man to the opposite building, right to the doorstep of that peeper's home. She wanted to confront that pervert face to face. The man slammed the door furiously, but there was no sound inside. Thinking no one was home, the man said goodbye to Julia and left hurriedly. But Julia firmly believed that the pervert was inside, and as she stepped forward trembling, attempting to knock again, the door unexpectedly opened on its own. However, the person opening the door was not the pervert, but an 80-year-old man. Julia could only apologize awkwardly and leave, but just as she was waiting for the elevator, that true perverted demon unexpectedly walked up slowly from the stairwell. Julia hid in the elevator in terror until the elevator door closed completely. After returning home, Julia fell into endless despair. Seeing his wife frowning all day, Francis handed her a newspaper stating that the serial killer had been arrested. He tried to convince his wife that everything was over, but looking at that completely unfamiliar face of the killer in the newspaper, Julia's intuition told her they caught the wrong person. The true demon is still at large. To ease the atmosphere, her husband took her to a company party, but to curry favor with his boss, Francis actually used Julia's fear as a conversation piece for amusement at the dinner table, mocking her for being scared half to death by the shadow in the building opposite.
What did you just say?
It's just a stupid work joke.
At this moment, Julia was completely heartbroken. Returning home, she immediately started packing her bags, deciding to completely escape this living hell. But just as she was halfway through packing, music suddenly came from Irina's room next door. Could her friend have returned safely? She went over to knock on the door was unlocked, but after entering, the room was empty. However, the very moment she let her guard down, a dark shadow suddenly burst forth from behind. It was exactly that long-stalking pervert. A sharp knife pierced her body. Julia tried her best to escape for her life, but collapsed weakly to the ground due to excessive blood loss. The pervert slowly lay prone in front of her, his eyes filled with a smug, sinister grin as if enjoying this perfect hunt. At this critical juncture, Francis finally returned home. Seeing his wife's half-packed luggage and the unanswered phone calls, he finally realized something was wrong and rushed over following the cell phone ringtone coming from the neighbor's house. Just as he stepped through the door, he collided head-on with the pervert who was about to escape. Just as Francis was about to step forward to stop him, an ear-splitting gunshot suddenly erupted from behind the pervert, and he instantly fell directly to the ground. In the pool of blood, Julia slowly lowered the gun in her hand. It turned out she had been faking death just now, and in her desperate struggle, she had found the pistol that Irina had hidden in the room. She ended this nightmare with her own hands. Walking out of the room, Julia looked coldly at this late-to-realize, completely useless husband before her without a single trace of warmth in her eyes. As for the price of all this, from now on you can experience it slowly for yourself.